Alara tightened her shawl around her shoulders as the creaking carriage slowed to a halt at the edge of the town. The wooden wheels groaned against the uneven path and the wind whipped cold against her cheeks. She stared at the small cluster of buildings before her, the town nestled like a secret at the edge of the forest. Beyond the trees, shadows seemed to move with a life of their own, whispering stories of creatures that no one dared name aloud. Her heart pounded in her chest. Months of letters, dreams, and hope had led her here. She had left the familiar behind, journeying across miles of dusty roads guided by the promise of a new life. A life where she would belong, where she might be loved. But the fear inside her, the one that had grown during long nights alone, did not fade. She swallowed hard, gripping the edges of the wooden bench as the carriage stopped. "Miss Alara?" a nervous voice called. A young man stepped forward holding a folded letter. Your fiancé awaits you, but he is not pleased, I'm afraid." Ilara's stomach dropped. "Not pleased?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, ma'am," the man said, his eyes darting nervously. "I'm sorry. I didn't write the letter. He says he cannot accept you." A cold wave of shame and disbelief washed over her. The journey, the hope, the courage to leave her past, all of it felt suddenly fragile like a candle in the wind. Her lips trembled, and for a moment she thought she might cry. But instead she held her head high, forcing herself to breathe. Thank you," she said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. The young man nodded and quickly left, leaving her alone at the edge of the town. Ilara looked around. The street was quiet, almost too quiet. A few townsfolk peeked through shuttered windows, curious eyes watching her from the safety of their homes. She felt their judgment like a weight pressing on her shoulders. The town seemed small, enclosed, as if it had grown from the forest itself, tangled and secretive. She started walking, unsure where to go. The wind tugged at her shawl, and the first hints of evening painted the sky in shades of gray and purple. She passed a small wooden inn, but the door was locked. A flicker of unease stirred inside her. She had no home here, no friend, no guide, only the forest that loomed behind the town, dark and foreboding, filled with unseen eyes and whispered dangers. Her footsteps faltered when she heard a low, almost imperceptible growl behind her. She spun, heart racing, but saw nothing, only the swaying trees and shadows that seemed to move as if alive. The hairs on her arms stood on end. She clutched her shawl tighter and kept moving, faster now, her eyes scanning for any sign of safety. "Hey!" a deep, commanding voice called from the edge of the street. Ilara froze. The voice was calm but firm, like a rock in the midst of a storm. From the shadows, a man emerged. He was tall, with broad shoulders and dark hair that fell just above his eyes. His gaze was steady yet unreadable, and something about him made her pause, a strange mix of danger and protection surrounding him. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. But with an edge of concern, she began, but no words came. Fear and relief tangled inside her. The man stepped closer. "Come with me. It's not safe. There are things in the forest. Creatures you wouldn't understand." Ilara hesitated, glancing back toward the dark trees. There was truth in his words. She had felt it in the growl, in the way the shadows moved. She nodded slowly, allowing him to lead her down a narrow path that wound between buildings and toward the outskirts of town. As they walked, she studied him in silence. His eyes were sharp, dark, and alert, scanning the horizon as though he could sense danger before it arrived. His presence was both comforting and intimidating. She felt a flutter of curiosity, mixed with a quiet caution. Finally, they reached a small cabin at the edge of the forest. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, and the wooden walls seemed to absorb the dim light, making the place feel almost hidden from the world. The man opened the door and gestured for her to enter. "Inside," he said. "It's safer. You can rest here." Ilara stepped in cautiously. The cabin was simple but warm, the fireplace already lit. The scent of pine and something faintly sweet lingered in the air. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The man nodded but didn't smile. "Kyle," he said, introducing himself. "Ilara," she replied. For a long moment they simply looked at each other. Kale's gaze was intense, as if he could see more than just her outward appearance. He could see her fears, her hope, and perhaps even the pain she carried from her past. "You've been through a lot," he said finally. "You don't have to speak about it." Not yet. Ilara's throat tightened. She had wanted this, a place to rest, someone to protect her. But the truth of rejection was still raw, and the kind eyes of this stranger brought both comfort and unease. She nodded, moving closer to the fireplace where warmth seeped into her cold fingers. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the cabin walls. In the forest beyond, a low, menacing growl echoed. Ilara froze, heart hammering in her chest. Kale's expression darkened, and without a word he moved to the door, peering into the encroaching shadows. His stance was alert, predatory. Ilara watched him, a mixture of fear and awe coursing through her. There was something wild about him, something untamed that she could not name. The way he moved, the intensity in his eyes. It stirred something inside her she didn't understand. Suddenly, a shadow leapt from the edge of the forest, a dark shape moving faster than the eye could follow. Kyle was there in an instant, his movements fluid and precise. The shadow hissed, circling, testing, and then Kale struck, pushing her gently behind him. The creature snarled, revealing glinting teeth, but Kale stood firm, his presence commanding, unyielding. The shadow seemed to recoil from him, and in that moment Ilara realized that Kale was unlike anyone she had ever met. There was strength in him that was almost supernatural, a power she could not begin to understand. The shadow eventually retreated, melting into the darkness of the forest. Kale lowered his guard, his chest heaving slightly from exertion. He looked at her, and for the first time something softer appeared in his eyes. A flicker of concern, of something almost like longing. "You're safe," he said quietly. For now. Ilara's lips parted, but she could not speak. Her heart was pounding, not just from fear, but from the realization that her life had changed in a single moment. She had come seeking safety and a new beginning. And though she had no idea what the future held, she sensed that this stranger, this lonely sheriff, was somehow part of it. She took a tentative step closer to the fire, glancing at him with gratitude and a spark of curiosity. Kyle watched her, the intensity in his gaze never wavering, and the shadows outside seemed to retreat as if aware that he commanded them. That night, as the wind moaned through the trees and the fire crackled, Ilara lay awake thinking of the forest, of Kale, and of the strange pulse of fear and fascination that stirred inside her. The town behind them was silent, but the forest whispered, alive with secrets. And in the depths of the shadows, eyes glimmered, watching, waiting. Ilara knew she had crossed a threshold. She had left rejection, shame, and solitude behind, stepping into a world where danger and desire were intertwined. And though she did not yet know it, she had also stepped into the orbit of Kale, a man whose true nature was hidden beneath human skin, and whose presence would change her life forever. Outside, the wind carried a low, haunting howl from the forest, a sound that made the fire flicker and the shadows dance. Ilara shivered, not from the cold, but from a sense that her journey had only just begun, and that the night held secrets she could not yet imagine. Cliffhanger. The howl rose again, closer this time, and Kale's eyes glowed faintly in the firelight, hinting at the power he kept hidden, and the danger that would soon test them both. The next morning, the forest lay quiet, shrouded in mist. Sunlight filtered weakly through the trees, casting pale beams onto the dewy ground. Ilara rose from the small cot in Kale's cabin, her hands still trembling slightly from the events of the previous night. She had slept fitfully, dreams haunted by shadowy shapes and glowing eyes, and yet she had awakened with a strange sense of safety. Kale had kept watch, she realized, though he had not admitted it aloud. The cabin was simple but warm. The fire had died to a smolder, leaving behind soft gray ashes that smelled faintly of pine. Kale stood by the window, arms crossed, his eyes scanning the forest beyond. He did not speak as she dressed, but the intensity in his gaze made her feel both protected and exposed. I should find somewhere to stay in town," Ilara said, trying to sound confident. Her voice, however, betrayed her hesitation. Kale did not turn immediately. "There is no place for you in town right now," he said finally. His voice was low and even, but there was an edge to it that made her pause. "People there, they do not welcome strangers easily, and they will treat you poorly." Ilara bit her lip. She had known rejection before, but this warning carried a weight she could not ignore. "Then I have no choice?" Kale's eyes softened for a moment, and he gestured toward the fireplace. "Stay here for now. I will not leave you alone while the forest watches." Ilara hesitated, then nodded. She realized that despite the strangeness of the situation, despite the mystery surrounding this man, he was offering her something she had not known in a long time: safety. Breakfast was a quiet affair. Kale had already prepared a simple meal of bread and fresh eggs, the kind that smelled comforting and warm. Ilara ate slowly, her eyes often drifting toward the window, toward the forest that seemed to hold secrets too deep to name. "Do you live here alone?" she asked finally, unable to stop the question from forming. Kale looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Mostly," he said. "I have responsibilities. The town relies on me, even if they do not understand me." Ilara nodded slowly, sensing there was much left unsaid. She had learned over time that some people carried their burdens silently, hiding the truths that might make others afraid. Kyle was one of those people. After breakfast, Kyle led her outside to gather firewood. The morning was cool, the air filled with the scent of damp earth and pine. As they walked together, Ilara noticed the way Kale moved, alert, precise, every step careful but purposeful. There was a strength in him, a readiness that spoke of experience and danger. "Do you know what lives in this forest?" she asked cautiously. Kale's eyes darkened. "More than one kind of danger," he said. "Some you can see, some you cannot." Ilara shivered, imagining the creatures of his warning. She could feel the tension in the air, a faint hum that seemed to rise from the ground itself. The forest was alive, but not just with trees and wind. It felt aware, as if it could sense her presence, as if it were judging her. As they worked, Kale kept glancing toward the shadows between the trees, his body tense and coiled, ready to respond at any sign of movement. Ilara watched him, a mixture of awe and unease stirring inside her. There was something more to him, something powerful and primal. She could not name it, yet she felt its presence like a pulse in the air. By midday, the firewood was stacked, and Kyle finally relaxed slightly. "You should rest," he said. "The journey has been long, and the town is not welcoming yet." Ilara hesitated, wanting to ask more about him, about the forest, about the shadows she had glimpsed last night. But there was something in his tone, in the edge of warning beneath it, that made her hold her questions back. Instead, she nodded, following him back inside the cabin. The hours passed slowly. Ilara tried to read from a small book she had brought, but her mind kept drifting to Kale, to the forest, to the sense of danger that lingered at the edges of her thoughts. She sensed that Kale was not entirely human. There was a wildness in him, a sharpness in his eyes that hinted at secrets he guarded fiercely. As evening approached, a storm began to form over the forest. Dark clouds rolled across the sky and the wind picked up, bending the trees and sending leaves swirling. The first drops of rain tapped against the cabin roof and the air grew colder. Kyle moved to the door, peering out into the growing darkness. "You should stay close," he said. "The storm brings more than rain. The forest grows restless in weather like this." Ilara nodded, stepping closer to him. She noticed the way his shoulders tensed, the subtle way his body moved as if listening to something she could not hear. A low, almost imperceptible growl escaped him, so quiet that she thought she had imagined it. The storm worsened. Thunder rolled across the sky, lightning flashing in the distance. Rain hammered the cabin roof and the shadows outside deepened. Ilara felt a shiver run down her spine, not from the cold but from the sense of the unknown pressing in around them. Suddenly, a movement in the window caught her eye. A dark shape darted between the trees, too quick to identify. She gasped, stepping back. Kale's body stiffened. His eyes, already sharp, seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Without a word, he moved to the door, opening it slightly and peering out into the storm. Ilara followed him, her heart pounding. The shadow moved again, closer this time, and Kale's voice dropped to a low growl. "Stay behind me," he said, and there was an edge of warning in his tone that made her obey immediately. The creature emerged from the rain, a wolf, large and dark, its eyes gleaming with intelligence and hunger. Kale stepped forward, his stance firm, and the wolf hesitated. It circled, growling, testing him. Ilara's breath caught. She had never seen a wolf act with such cunning, such awareness. It was as if it understood more than an ordinary animal, and she felt the thrill of fear and awe ripple through her. Kale's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, his presence shifted. He was no longer just a man standing in the storm. He carried a power that seemed to ripple outward, commanding the forest, the shadows, and even the creature itself. The wolf growled, then retreated, melting back into the darkness. Ilara stared at him, her mind racing. Something about him had changed, though she could not name it. There was danger in him, yes, but also a strange magnetic pull. She felt drawn to him, even as she feared what she did not understand. Cale turned back toward her, his expression softening slightly. "You are safe," he said, his voice calm but carrying a depth of intensity that made her heart beat faster. "For now." Ilara nodded, unable to speak. She realized that her life had already begun to shift in ways she could not predict. This man, this stranger, had saved her, and yet she sensed that his protection came at a cost, that there were parts of him she could not yet see. The storm raged outside, lightning casting fleeting shadows across the cabin. Ilara settled near the fire, her thoughts racing. Kyle remained standing by the door, watching the forest as if listening to a secret only he could hear. Hours passed in silence. The rain eventually lessened, but the forest remained restless, alive with whispered sounds and hidden movements. Ilara finally dared to speak. "Kyle, what are you?" Kyle turned slowly, meeting her gaze. For a long moment he said nothing, and the tension in the room grew thick. Then he spoke carefully, choosing each word. "I am someone who has learned to survive in a world that fears what it cannot understand," he said. "There are parts of me you will not understand, not yet. But you are safe here, as long as you trust me." Ilara studied him, her fear mingling with curiosity and a strange, unfamiliar longing. She wanted to ask more, to demand the truth, but something in his presence made her hesitate. She realized that trust would have to grow slowly, like a fragile seed in the shadowed soil. The night deepened. Outside, the forest whispered and rustled, alive with unseen eyes. Inside, the fire crackled, casting warm light across Ilara's thoughtful face. She felt the weight of her journey, the loneliness of her past, and the faint spark of hope that perhaps here at the edge of the forest, she might find more than safety. She might find belonging. But even as she allowed herself a small measure of hope, a chill ran through her. Cale's eyes flicked to the shadows outside, his body taut and alert. Ilara realized then that the world beyond the cabin was vast, dark, and full of secrets, and that Cale carried some of those secrets within him. Cliffhanger. A howl echoed from deep within the forest, closer than before. Cale's eyes flashed in the firelight, hinting at the wild power he kept hidden. And Ilara understood with a mixture of fear and awe that their journey together had only just begun.